There is one bass in this price range where the most expensive upgrade is already installed, and almost nobody who buys it seems to know that. We have done this twice now. On a Squier, the problem was that the parts market is dimensioned for Fender, and a Squier is not quite a Fender. On an Ibanez, the problem was the opposite. Ibanez measures its own instruments perfectly consistently, to measurements the aftermarket does not use. Sire is a third kind of problem, and it is the most awkward of the three because a Sire looks like a Fender from every angle. It has a jazz bass body, a jazz bass control plate, a jazz bass pickguard shape, and in the two places where you are most likely to reach for a part, it is not a Fender at all. So this is the Marcus Miller version. What is already better than it needs to be, what quietly does not fit, and why the upgrade order on this instrument is almost the reverse of the last two videos. Nobody is paying for this video. Every topic on this channel comes out of your comments, and Sire came up in the last two. Same warning as always. Sire has revised these instruments repeatedly. A first generation, a second generation. The vintage models and the current new gen are not the same instrument, and some of the parts change between them specifically. Every number in this video is a starting point for your own tape measure, not a promise. On this instrument, that warning is not boilerplate. I will show you exactly where it bites. Let us start with the thing that changes the whole conversation. The preamp is already the upgrade. The V7 runs the Marcus Heritage 3 preamp on 18 volts from two 9-volt batteries wired in series. 3 bands with a sweepable mid-range running from 80 Hz to 2000 Hz, a passive-style tone control, and an active passive switch. And in passive mode, it works with no batteries at all. You still have volume, tone, and a blend between the two pickups. Read that specification again and price it. A sweepable mid 18-volt operation and a genuine passive fallback is what people pay several $100s to retrofit into other instruments. On a Squier, the electronics are where the savings were made. On a Sire, the electronics are the best thing on the instrument, which has a consequence that most upgrade advice completely misses. On the Squier video, electronics were third on my list. On the Ibanez video, the preamp was second, and I said it was the highest value change on the instrument. On a Sire, that entire conversation is already handled. You cannot buy your way to a meaningful improvement there, and if you try, you are spending money to move sideways. So what is left is the hardware, and the hardware is where Sire made the savings. That is not me being unkind. It is the settled opinion of the people who own them. The playability and the tone are where these instruments shine, and the tuners and the bridge are the weak point, which brings us straight to the two traps. Trap 1, and it is the big one, the bridge. Sire uses its own mounting pattern. Not a Fender 4-hole, not a Fender 5-hole, its own, which means there is essentially no direct retrofit bridge in the ordinary parts market. Nothing you can unscrew and screw back down in the same holes. There are two honest ways around that, and they are very different jobs. The first is a bridge made specifically for these instruments. There are aftermarket bridges built to the Sire pattern and sold as direct drop-ins for the Marcus Miller basses. No modification at all. If you want a different bridge on this bass, that is the path with no drilling in it. The second is the standard aftermarket route, and it means new holes. Fitting a hip shot kick-ass, for example, means the Fender 5-hole pattern. 5 new mounting holes, drilled fresh. The one mercy is that the new holes do not overlap the old ones, and the kick-ass base plate is large enough to cover the abandoned originals. So the instrument does not end up looking like a repair. While we are here, the spacing, because this is exactly where the generation warning bites. Sire string spacing at the bridge is reported at both 19 and 20 millimeters, depending on which model and how many strings. Those are two different instruments as far as a parts order is concerned. Measure yours before you buy anything. String center to string center at the saddles. And if you are worried about landing wrong, the kick-ass saddles adjust from 17.5 to 20 millimeters, which covers both. Trap 2, the tuners. And this one is the most instructive thing in the entire video. Hipshot at one point released a drop-in replacement for the Sire tuners. Then Sire redesigned the tuners and moved the screw holes. The drop-in was drop-in for the instrument it was designed against and not for the one that came after it. This is why I keep saying measure. It is not just that Sire is not Fender. It is that Sire is not always Sire. A forum post from 4 years ago describing a perfect fit was true when it was written. What that means in practice, on the current instruments, Hipshot make tuners specifically for the V7 series, the HB14, and that is the shortest path. Going outside that, expect partial alignment. One documented Schaller swap had the front pair of screw holes just about line up, and the rear pair not line up at all. And there is a wrinkle that saves some of you money entirely. On the new-gen instruments, Sire fitted lightweight aluminum machine heads as standard, specifically to take mass off the headstock, which means the single most popular Sire upgrade, lightweight tuners for neck dive, may already be done on your bass. Check what is on your headstock before you order anything. Trap 3, pickups. And here Sire is closer to Fender than Ibanez was, but not close enough to buy blind. The stock pickups are reported at around 0.722 inches wide, with the neck pickup at about 3.965 inches and the bridge at about 4.101, and they sit tight in their cavities. Standard Fender dimension jazz pickups generally do fit. Nordstrand is the swap you will see over and over in owner threads, but Bartolini is reported at roughly 1 millimeter too long and 2 millimeters too wide, which means routing. Notice what just happened. On the Ibanez, Bartolini was the easy answer, and the Fender dimension parts were the problem. Here it is exactly reversed. The brand that solved the last instrument creates work on this one. There is no such thing as a generally good upgrade brand, only a brand that matches the measurement you are working to. And Trap 4, which is small, cheap, and annoying out of all proportion, the pickguard. A Sire pickguard is not a Fender pickguard. Different screw pattern. Fit a Fender jazz guard to a Sire and you are drilling new holes, and it likely will not line up with the neck pocket or the control plate either. On the Squier video, the pickguard was on my list of things that drop straight in. The biggest visual change for the smallest money. On a Sire, it is a custom-made part or a modification. Same job, opposite answer. Two instruments apart. Right. What actually just works? Strings. Always, everywhere. A setup, not a part, still the highest return per dollar spent on any instrument in this series. Strap buttons and strap locks. Direct swap into the existing screw holes. Knobs if you dislike the ones fitted. Standard control knob fitment. Cheap, reversible. And that is genuinely most of the list, which tells you something on its own. So the order for a Sire specifically. It is short, and that is the point. First, setup and strings. Same as every instrument in this series. Second, tuners, but only if it dives and only after you have checked whether you already have the lightweight ones. Third, the bridge, and only if you have a real complaint about it. If you do, decide first which of the two jobs you are doing, a Sire pattern drop-in or 5 new holes. Fourth, pickups if you genuinely want a different voice. Measure and stay with Fender dimension parts unless you are prepared to route. And there is no fifth, because the fifth on every other instrument was the electronics, and yours are already good. Now the honest part, the first thing. The most common piece of advice from people who own these is that they do not need modifying. The construction is good. The frets are good. Nobody is fixing defects here. They are customizing something that already works, which is a completely legitimate reason to spend money, but it is a different reason, and it deserves a different budget. The second, because Sire fitted the expensive component and saved on the cheap ones, the arithmetic of upgrading is unusually bad here. A bridge plus tuners plus fitting labor can approach a serious fraction of what the instrument cost. And every one of those dollars goes into hardware, not into tone. If you are chasing sound on a Sire, the sound is already sitting in the preamp you own. Third, this instrument punishes secondhand information more than any other in this series, because Sire changed the parts underneath the advice. When you read that something fits, check what generation the person was holding and what year they wrote it. That single habit will save you more money on this bass than any part on this list. And fourth, the one that applies to every video in this series. If you are planning to change the bridge, the tuners, the pickups, and the pickguard, you do not want to upgrade this bass. You want a different bass. On this instrument, that is a slightly strange thing to conclude, given what you would be throwing away. 3 questions before you buy any part for a Sire. Which generation is it? Not which model, which generation. That single fact decides whether the tuner part you are looking at is a drop-in or a drilling job. Have you measured your string spacing? 19 and 20 millimeters are both reported. One of them is yours. And is this fixing a problem or is it decoration? Both are allowed. Only one of them is urgent. Here is the honest verdict. The Sire is the instrument in this series where the usual upgrade logic runs out of road. The part that normally transforms a cheap bass, the electronics, is already better than the instrument's price suggests. What is left to improve is hardware, and the hardware is precisely where Sire is not Fender. Its own bridge pattern, its own pickguard pattern, and tuners that changed underneath everybody's advice. Check the generation, measure the spacing, and leave the preamp alone because you already own the upgrade. Tell me in the comments which Sire you own, which generation, and what you have changed on it. And particularly if you found a bridge that dropped in with no drilling, because that is the single most useful thing anyone can post under this video. Subscribe for honest, no-hype truth about bass gear.